Welcome to the Flame Tree Myth and Fiction podcast. Welcome to this week's episode of the Myth and Fiction podcast. This one we're calling The Sound of Reclamation. We've been wanting to include these two stories for a little while, but it was important to us, as it is with each episode, to make sure that the pairing is careful and the most impactful it can be. So these stories both sort of ask that question of what happens when someone who is never supposed to speak suddenly finds their voice. Specifically, we are talking about women and violence against women, so this is a trigger warning for anyone that doesn't want to listen to those kind of subjects. But we do find these stories very important to read and listen to, and to understand, basically. So we wanted to share them with you today. As usual, we have a modern story and a classic story. The modern one is brutally contemporary, and the classic is one you may have heard of, and if you haven't read the description already, you might be able to guess it from the fact that it is as ancient as the changing seasons. As mentioned before, it's not an easy listen, but it's a very good story. Harry shows us women who are reduced to objects, literal vessels for other people's greed. But memory, it turns out, is a dangerous thing to leave intact. So what starts as horror becomes something else entirely. Something that might just be hope. This is Vessels and Warnings, narrated by Cheryl Asantumi.
Vessels and Warnings by Gabrielle Emem Harry. We knew that something had slipped when we first began to hear. Through the thick oak, mahogany, stainless steel and marble, through wardrobe doors and bathroom tiles, cement and mirrors, behind paintings of imposing, straight-faced, humble, smiling, arrogant, friendly men and women wearing usobo and etibo, isiagu and abada, three-piece suits and ball gowns and knight's regalia, in watery silk boo-boos, pretty pastel lace sleeves brushing creamy Italian leather, coral heavy on their necks, beaded velvet wrappers tied tight, tips of towering gele cut by picture frames, white gold weighing down their wrists, platinum hugging diamonds in their cufflinks. We do not yet know what covenant has been broken, or what debt has been left unpaid, but we feel something slacking. Some binding that has kept us suspended somewhere has loosened, and we are dropping slowly back to awareness. Through the solid and secure doors of their safe and secret places, whispers trickle into our once blocked ears, and words crawl out of our ever-open mouths. Mouths which for decades, weeks, months and nights have only known the crisp, fresh taste of dirty money. In all this time, all we have known is the voices of the ones who hold the keys to our stomachs. They would speak the commands that had been handed to them in clasped hands, in brown envelopes, in bowls of blood, in the lines of tortoise shells and the scattered patterns of babies' bones. And we would feel a weight congeal in our stomachs, pushing up our throats, our mouths widening impossibly as the money scraped our dry tongues and brushed past teeth to fall into the brass bowls, steel suitcases, wooden trays and calabashes at our feet. The gathering and the pouring, that was all we knew. We were bowls fetching wealth from realms unknown and spilling it into waiting hands to be used for what we did not know. What is a wayward girl but a vessel, something waiting to be emptied? Ask our mothers, and our boyfriends, and our best friends, and our pastors. They will tell you the bitter truth. They have never spared their tongues. They have never let their hands rest from pointing at us in warning, pulling their ears in admonition, slapping dangerous habits out of us. But we refused to hear, and now they have washed those hands of us. And now we cannot hear, except that we are starting to. We hear phone calls and whispered conversations, covert arrangements. We learn the language of power. It is sharp and poisonous, syrupy and sweet. It demands and it delivers. The core of it is hidden and that is why we understand it well. Secrets see each other clearly in the dark. We overhear motives and justifications, and dismissals and denials. We hear well-cooked lies and raw truths, and a potent mix of the two. These keyholders of ours, they are skilled in secrecy. We overhear the mundane as well. Children coming to parents for reassurance and investments, lovers quarreling and coming together again, teeth and hair being brushed, snores and the rustle of sheets. We hear lives being lived, even as ours are forever still. We do not feel pain or loss. The time for that has not yet come. We hear schemes being plotted, betrayals brewing, unfaithfulness scheduled, and then the unfolding of the aftermath of all these things. We hear their greatest strengths and weaknesses laid out to us in their own voices and the voices of those who know them best. We turn these things over in the darkness and throw them away. They are useless to us. After the whispers come the memories. We had forgotten ourselves, of course. As we said, a vessel must be emptied. But gradually we are remembering. We remember hating Akamu, loving Bap, being indifferent towards Ogi. We remember loving fathers, strict fathers, dead fathers. We do not remember ever having fathers. We remember mothers and their tears, and their screams and their cold looks and their biting disappointment. Their forgiveness and their sweaty hands and their damp, loving eyes. Their deep, life-changing hatred, unquenchable and inexhaustible, as if drawn from a well within themselves. We remember rain. How it watered a patch of scent leaf we grew in our childhood so well that it washed away. How the accompanying thunder made us grip the waist of the bunkmate whose bed we climbed into one night, in JSS 2, and how her hand on our back warmed our whole body, making us sweat. We remember how rain washed away our tears as we ran from our boyfriend's house after finding him with another girl. How rain capsized our father's boat at Bonny, leaving our mother to fend for 7 children alone. It was raining when our mother slapped us and dragged us out of her house by the ear, breaking a pink plastic hanger on our back and telling us she would kill us when next she set eyes on us. The spit of our keyholders splashes on us as they fervently recite their requests. It takes us back to how rain feels on skin. When they leave, we replicate the feeling as we start to cry. We had forgotten our eyes as well, forgotten how to see in this deep, unending dark. We have forgotten so much. Maybe soon we will remember our names. We recall warnings. Yes, most girls are vessels, but some girls are warnings on legs. A warning is an important tool to mold a girl. They were pressed like patterns onto our skin, written on the tablets of our hearts so they would never be erased. We know those girls as well as their stories. Oftentimes, the two things are different. We think of Joy and her bright pink hair and her pregnant belly, Munirat and her straight-legged gait, and her empty ring finger, Uju's high voice, and the poster with her face, and the number to call if she was found, Ruki's loud laugh and her funeral. We know that we are warnings now as well as vessels. We are omens, but of what we do not know. What will we call down, and on whom? We are recalling how we got here, how we were called and compelled and convinced and coerced and captured. We see in our mind's eyes a car taking a wrong turn, a driver ignoring our screams, a knife pulled out of a glove compartment. We see the bus with 5 friendly faces, 2 of them women. We always made sure we checked for women. A bus stop passed even though we called out clearly, louder each time until a scream was climbing up our throat, that we had passed our destination. We are taken back to the job interview, a soft peach chiffon top tucked into a decent black skirt, past the knee with space between fabric and skin, a shoddy building, a man with dull shoes and a shiny tie and a smile that spread too wide. We feel the phantom itch of mosquitoes biting our legs, gutter water splashing on us, people looking away from our extended hand, until one woman took it and smiled at us, taking us home, giving us rice and stew and a place to sleep. We think back to waking up on a cement floor, on grass amidst trees, in hospital beds with the bitter smell of antiseptic and the sickening scent of mango air freshener, in trucks with sacks of sugar, breathing in syrupy air. We remember ropes around our wrists and realization. We see the men and women, and some who could be either or both, faces white with chalk. We feel knives with red-wrapped handles sliding down our stomachs, sour concoctions being forced down our throats, incantations spoken over our heads, our blood dripping into bowls. We glimpse the shadowed figures circling us, feeling their hunger radiate over us like heat from a consuming fire. They stared at us, but they did not see us clothed in white wrappers stained with tears and blood and snot and piss. They did not see our rage and fear and despair and resignation. They did not hear us curse them and their bloodlines, promise silence if they let us go, sob out names of lovers and mothers alike, ask impassively what this was even for. They saw only bodies. We were laid flat on the dirt-packed floor, trays on which their fortunes would be carried to them. They were impatient and anxious, doubtful and so sure. We were not the first things they had sacrificed. They had given up loving mothers with round faces and warm eyes and soft hands, reliable husbands with wrinkles from smiling often, shiny, gap-toothed children, both living and possible, and smart, joke-cracking girls like spines of joy. They had given up too much to look the deliverers of their dreams in the eye, to find something moving there by mistake. We remember opening our eyes to darkness, the places in the pits of our stomachs where we used to draw anger, hold tears, where butterflies used to flutter and fear used to hide, were now filled to swelling with naira, dollars, euros, pounds. After the memories comes the sadness. It comes with stillness. Not the statue standing of dispensers which we were accustomed to, but the freezing weight of despair, of loss. We know now what we were, what we can never be again. We feel ourselves being drained over and over again, filled only to be taken from. We did not belong to ourselves. With time, and all we have is time, we realize that we have never belonged to ourselves at all, even out there in the light. We used to be vessels of a different kind. For mothers' dreams, for lovers' hopes, vessels of punishment and of caution. We have been practicing all our lives for this. Now we are delivering. After the sadness comes the anger. One day, instead of paper, we find our stomachs filled with fire. It is spreading as if our blood is fuel. It is roaring up our throats, and it is sparking one last wave of memory. We are recalling our names. Daughter, and Efosa, and Kopa, and Ashao, and baby girl, and Emediong, and bastard, and sweetheart, and Ezine, and sunshine, and Presido, and Evelyn, and that girl. And just like that, we are no longer standing still. We are lying in wait. When the keyholders come, we grasp them by their soft, smooth, blood-bathed hands, and we watch their eyes widen and pop. Their mouths expand to call for help. We feel their blood pulse and hear their breath quicken as they struggle. We laugh as we step past them, out of the darkness and into the light, and then we turn on them. We tear our nails into their softest parts, their stomachs and cheeks, their inner arms and eyeballs. We tear them to pieces. We are biting and ripping and clawing through skin and flesh and bone, cracking marrow and licking blood off our lips. We are dancing to screams and rhythmic jolts, tearing an arm from a socket to drum it on a stomach, digging thumbs into eye sockets to press out sweet screams. We are rushing out of crevices like a colony of fire ants, swarming as one, stinging as many. We look around at the palaces in which our prisons were contained, and they turn our stomachs. We are the ones who built it all. These crystal chandeliers and the silk-embroidered cushions, the pearlescent marble tiles and gold-trimmed everything, all of it is built on our bent backs. We are so disgusted by the overindulgent beauty that bile rises inside us and pours out of our mouths. It burns all that it touches, and we make sure it touches everything. It reduces rainbow-threaded carpets and stainless steel and cement and iron rods to a burnt, black nothing. We are taking back all that we have given. We know our name now, and it is not mercy. We are pouring like water. We are flowing like blood. We cannot be contained.
That was Vessels and Mornings, where remembering your own name becomes an act of rebellion. And the fury in that story isn't random, it's very ancient. It connects to something that has been cycling through human stories since we first started telling them. And that brings us to our second tale. Sometimes I think we tell ourselves that the old myths are just stories, safely contained in the past and no longer relevant. But this story, Hesiod's rape of Persephone, feels uncomfortably current. A young woman taken against her will, a mother's grief that changes the world, a compromise that no one really chose. But there is something that grows from that darkness. Persephone doesn't just survive. She becomes this force that brings life back to a dead world, year after year. This is The Rape of Persephone, narrated by Amanda Benzacree.
The Rape of Persephone, originating from Hesiod's Theogony. Persephone was the daughter of Zeus and Demeter, a virgin of such remarkable beauty that she was kept hidden from the eyes of wishful suitors for all of her life. She spent her days idyllically gathering fragrant flowers in the fields, which spread as far as the eye could see, and dancing with the wood folk who doted on the young maiden. Demeter was goddess of the earth, and Persephone whiled away the long summery hours, helping her mother to gather seeds, to pollinate, and to sow the fertile earth. She was shielded from the outside world by her doting parents, kept carefully away from the dangers that could befall so fair a creature. They lived in the vale of Enna, where Persephone blossomed like the flowers which surrounded her sanctuary. One warm, sun-kissed evening, Persephone lay back in the long grasses by the idle stream which trickled through the paddock at the end of the garden. Bees hummed above the lapping waters, butterflies glided and came to rest beside the serene young woman. An eager toad lapped at the darting dragonflies. Persephone's beauty was accentuated by lush green grass and by the expression of placid contentment which embraced her exquisite features. It was no wonder, then, that the passionate Hades, king of the underworld, should stop in his tracks when he spied this graceful vision, should draw back the anarchic horses which lunged and tugged at his fiery chariot. He drew a deep breath. He must have her. Now Hades and Zeus were brothers, and Hades thought nothing of approaching him to ask for Persephone's hand in marriage. Zeus knew that his daughter would be well cared for by Hades, but he felt saddened by the thought of losing her to the world from which no mortal could return. He wavered, reluctant to displease his brother, but more apprehensive still of the wrath of Demeter, who would never allow such a match to take place. Zeus announced that he could not offer his permission, but neither would he deny it, and encouraged by this response, Hades returned to the peaceful spot where Persephone lay and seized her. A great chasm opened in the earth, and holding Persephone under an arm, Hades and his horses plunged into the dark world beneath. It was many hours before Demeter realized that Persephone had vanished, and many days before she could come to terms with her loss. She shunned the attentions of Zeus, refused to attend the council of the gods. She dressed herself in the robes of a beggar woman, and in this disguise prepared to roam the realm in search of her missing daughter. The earth grew bare as Demeter ceased to tend it. Fruit withered on the vine. Plenteous fields grew fallow. The warm western winds ceased to blow. The land grew cold and barren. Demeter's travels took her across many lands. At each she stopped, searched, and begged for information. At each she was turned away empty-handed, often snubbed and ill-treated. She grew colder, and famine spread across the earth. At last she came to the land of Eleusis, the kingdom of Celeus and his wife Metaneira. There Demeter, in her disguise, was welcomed and taken in by Queen Metaneira, who instinctively trusted the beggar woman and asked her to act as nurse to her baby son, the Prince Demophoon. Demeter was weakened by her journey and welcomed the respite. She fell in love with the young prince and poured out her longing for her daughter in his care. She grew more content, bathing the infant in nectar and holding him daily above the fire in order to burn away his mortality. The greatest gift she could offer him was immortality, and she poured her supreme powers into the process, protecting the child from the flames so that he remained unharmed. One day, Metaneira paid an unexpected visit to the nursery and chanced to see this extraordinary sight. She flew into a panic, and the startled Demeter dropped the child into the fire, where he was burned to death. At once Demeter took on her godly form and chastised the queen for causing the death of the child they both loved so deeply. The people of Eleusis paid tribute to the god in their midst, and in return she set up a temple and showed them how to plant and sow seeds in the arid earth. She blessed them, and as their kindness was repaid by an end to their years of famine, so came the news she had long awaited. A stranger came to her in her temple one night as she prepared to retire. He'd been tending his flocks, he said, and he'd seen the ground open up to greet a flaming chariot led by a team of black horses. In the carriage was a screaming girl who'd thrust something into the startled herder's hands just before the earth closed upon her. He held it out to her now. It was Persephone's girdle. The wretched Demeter knew at once what had befallen her beloved precious daughter. She returned in haste to Olympus, where she confronted Zeus. And so it was decided that Persephone should be allowed to return to her mother. He sent word to Hades, who reluctantly agreed to part from his young bride. As Persephone prepared to leave, he shyly offered her a pomegranate to eat on the journey, a token of his love, his esteem, he said. Persephone was charmed by the gesture, and breaking the fast she had undertaken while trapped in the underworld, she nibbled at several seeds. At once darkness fell upon her. Her mother stood just past the gates to the underworld, but she was unable to reach her. For any mortal who eats or drinks in the land of Hades has no choice but to remain there forever. A chasm opened between mother and child, one which neither could pass. But Zeus, ashamed by his part in the matter, and deeply concerned by Demeter's neglect of the land, which refused to flower or bear fruit, stepped in. It was agreed that Persephone would become reunited with her mother and make her home again on Earth. But for 3 months each year, 1 month for every seed of the pomegranate she had eaten, she must return to the underworld and become Hades' queen. Their reunion was warmed by the sun, which shone for the first time on the cold land. Birds poked their heads from knotted branches, buds and then leaves thrust their way through the hardened earth. Spring had arrived in all her fecund splendor. But for the 3 months each year in which Persephone returns to Hades, Demeter throws her cloak across the earth, bringing sterility and darkness, until Persephone breathes once more in the land of the living, bringing spring.
That was The Rape of Persephone. Both of these stories are quite striking because they don't end with rescue. They end with power, the kind that comes from surviving something that was meant to destroy you completely. Persephone becomes queen of 2 worlds. Those women in Harry's story become something beyond containment. And neither transformation erases what came before, but both refuse to let that be the end of the story. The point is what some people managed to build from the wreckage, not because they had to, but because they chose to. So we wanted to leave you with a couple of questions to think about. When have you seen someone take back their story? When have you done it yourself?
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Flame Tree Myth and Fiction podcast. If you like this podcast, please remember to recommend it to a friend. Goodbye for now.